How much do you think we know, and how much do you think we don't know about what's out there?
I can actually quantify that answer.
But you're brilliant at crystallizing the really important questions in life. One of which is, how long have we got here?
Yeah, well, there are some ideas about that.
All right, let's go.
I'm talking to arguably the most popular scientist in the universe ever, Professor Neil deGrasse Tyson, whose new book, just to do a bit of media sensationalism there, Neil, his new book, To Infinity and Beyond, is out this month. It's absolutely riveting. You write about this stuff so brilliantly. You bring it all so alive. I want to go into a few things. But first of all, the key question for me with all this, especially when I was reading your book, how much do you think we know, and how much do you think we don't know about what's out there?
That's a great question, and I can actually quantify that answer. So there are these things, there's dark matter you might have heard about. So dark matter is 85%, it's responsible for 85% of the gravity in the universe, and we have no idea what it is, but we can measure it. There's dark energy responsible for the accelerated expansion of the universe. We can measure that, but we don't know what's causing it. And then you add up all of these sort of what these forces are doing in the universe, it's 96% of what's driving the universe. And all the forces of nature that we know and love, gravity, electromagnetism, the strong and weak nuclear forces, life, chemistry, biology, physics, that's in 4% of the universe. So we know enough about the universe to quantify our ignorance. So we know 4% of what's going on out there. But also keep in mind that as the area of our knowledge grows, so too does the perimeter of our ignorance. And that is the very soul of science, that there are questions, people say, what questions do you want answered? Yeah, I don't think that way. I think, what question do I not even yet know to ask?
I think that...
Hey, stay tuned. I just wanted to quickly let you know that at the end of this video, you can expect me to give a theological breakdown about two things Neil Tyson is talking about here. That being the expansion of the universe and the expansion of knowledge increasing. It's going to be an interesting theory that I formulate and put together. With that being said, let's finish this video.
I think, what question do I not even yet know to ask?
I think that's the really interesting part, is that you're probably not even thinking of the great question, right? Because there may be something...
Correct. I lose sleep over that, yes.
Now, I know you're an avowed atheist. How can you be so certain that there is no supernatural, godlike entity out there, given that we know so little?
Well, first, I don't count myself among the ranks of avowed atheists. And I'll give a fast example why. A friend of mine went up to fix the Hubble telescope, okay, on the space shuttle. And on my Facebook feed, I said, Godspeed to the space shuttle astronauts. And then in the comment thread, it said, I thought you were an atheist. How could you possibly say that? And so the fact that I gleefully said that and atheists complained about it, clearly I'm not an atheist. Okay?
What are you?
My favorite Broadway musical of all time is Jesus Christ Superstar, which I saw in real time in New York City. I don't know that atheists can, so I don't...
So is there a God then, Neil deGrasse Tyson? Are we about to have breaking news?
I don't know.
Is there a God?
Okay, so what I will tell you is that there are a lot of unknowns in the universe, but just because there are unknowns does not mean there's a deity in the unknown. If you're going to assign a deity to that which... It doesn't mean there isn't, that's correct.
So you're more of an open mind about this, right?
Everyone should. If the unknown is the unknown. But the track record of people saying, God is behind this, and then you add a little science to it and you find out, no, we can completely explain it and control it, then the history of that exercise is so rich with science discovering the unknowns that were previously ascribed to deity, like lightning bolts and weather systems. There was Poseidon, there was Zeus, there was, just look at the history of this. I'm not given reason to say, we're gonna find something, God is gonna be at the center of that, and there'll be no science to apply. I'm gonna look for the science first, because that's how the history of this exercise has unfolded.
In a moment, but you're brilliant at crystallizing the really important questions in life. One of which is, how long have we got here?
Yeah, well, there are some ideas about that because we still don't know enough about the forces that will end it all. Oh, sorry. We might have 100 years on Earth.
What?
At the rate we're going.
Really?
No, sorry. There's Earth issues that require geopolitical solutions.
Self-harm.
Okay, correct. And then there's the universe, the death of the sun, the collision of the Milky Way galaxy with the Andromeda galaxy, and possibly the Big Rip.
How would the sun die?
Oh, the sun, like any star, it will run out of fuel in its core, and it starts changing. It starts bloating and getting so large that it will engulf the orbit of Mercury and Venus and come very close to Earth. So imagine looking on the horizon and sunrise is half the sky. Okay, that would be terrifying.
Is this even starting to happen?
No, not yet. No, we have another several billion years. So no, if you're going to prioritize...
Well, that's all right. That's a dropped intro, isn't it?
If you're
You could have said that to start with.
What you're worried about. Yeah, let that one go. All right. But there's another one, the Big Rip, that if the expansion of the universe accelerates at a continued rate and it goes unchecked, the universe will be expanding in 22 billion years. It'll expanding faster than the fabric of space-time can keep up with it. And it'll just rip. And I'm terrified by this.
For 22 billion years. Why are you terrified? You're not going to be here.
I'm terrified.
Nobody you know is going to be here.
I just, it's okay to be scared of things that you won't
Can we
witness.
stop it happening, the Big Rip?
We can't stop climate change, apparently. Are you worried about the Big Rip? We're going to stop the Big Rip of the universe?
The Big Rip would be it.
We're pretty incompetent on so many levels. I would not hold that whole high hope for
What about
stopping
another
that.
threat?
All right, so what I'm going to be doing is talking about the expansion of the universe and the expansion of knowledge as Neil Tyson was doing here. All right, so it's important to understand that what I'm about to do is theorize what I believe theology is pointing to and what I believe science is pointing to. And what I'm about to break down is not an argument for the existence of God. Rather, what I am doing is I am using theology and science to explain how the world or the universe may potentially end. All right, so out of the two things I'm going to explain, again, that being the knowledge and the expansion of knowledge, and then the expansion of the universe, let's talk about the first point. That being the knowledge, okay? As Neil Tyson said, it seems like the more that we learn and that learning increases, it's like there's this outside force, okay? We can use that term if we want or not, but you're with me, right? Okay, there's something outside of this knowledge, it seems or appears to be that the more we learn, it seems like the more we realize that we actually don't know. So as the area of our knowledge grows, so too is the perimeter of our ignorance. Hear me out. This made me think the more that we learn, the more we realize that we don't know. The more answers we get, the more questions we have, which seems never ending. So this is where my theory comes into play. To me, this implies that if our knowledge grows, while at the same time the perimeter of knowledge around our limited knowledge is expanding, doesn't this potentially imply something eternal? Now, someone would say that that eternal thing might be the universe, or some would believe it to be a God. Whether it be an eternal universe or an eternal God, which is the belief that I adhere to, that being an eternal God, I believe this to be the case because within our 4% of knowledge, I believe that the universe began to exist, and that's not just my subjective belief. Rather, it is an objective statement or opinion or an evidence formed by inference to the best explanation that, yes, the universe did begin to exist, which logically implies something outside of it must have done the creating. So on top of that, you have the universe beginning to exist and the fine tuning and even the initial conditions that were set so precisely that if everything wasn't set precisely how it was, that we wouldn't have Earth or the world or the universe as it exists today, which implies a mind. And again, does imply something outside of what we know doing the creating of what we know. Again, that being the 4%. Even further, evidence shows that the God that created this universe came into this historical timeline that he created. And we have historical evidence of Jesus' existence, his death by Roman crucifixion, and strong evidence of resurrection, as even some atheists will attribute or claim that, yeah, this does seem to appear strong evidence, such as Christopher Hitchens. He doesn't say that about the resurrection, but he does say that about the fine-tuning argument that creationists do adhere to. So as Tyson says, we are always learning something. We have more knowledge pushing out or expanding the perimeter around us. So if you logically follow this conclusion all the way to its end, it will mean that the more knowledge you learn, the more expansion outside of the knowledge you know, which means there's something eternal outside of us that is giving us this knowledge. Now, Albert Einstein, he at first believed that the universe was eternal, but then he realized that it began to exist. And he was a little bit upset when he realized that the universe began to exist. Because if it was eternal, he realized he didn't have to study it out, because if it's eternal, it just explains itself. It always was. But once he found out evidence that the universe began to exist, which implies something outside of it, then he realized he was going to have to look deeper into this. So with that being said, I would like to read 2 Bible verses, one from the Old Testament and one from the New Testament. This first scripture that I'm going to read is 1 Corinthians 13, verses 8 through 13. And what Paul is doing is, to sum it up, he says, love is going to last forever. And he explains that right now we have prophecy, we have tongues and interpretations of tongues. But at the very end of this temporal universe, we will have love that remains forever, and we will not need prophecy because we will fully know. So here Paul says, verse 8, love never fails, but where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when completeness comes, what is in part disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these 3 remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. There's going to come a point when we won't even need faith or hope, because love is the greatest of all. Who is love? God. Obviously, is God looked at to be an eternal creator? Yes. And as Paul says that the knowledge will pass away, well, that 4% of knowledge is going to mean nothing in comparison to living with the very one that outside the perimeter who created the 4% of knowledge that we know. And what is also intriguing is that Paul says that he is fully known, okay? We are fully known by God, but we see in part. But there's going to come a time when completeness comes, when the end of the world and the completion of the divine plan of God comes, and we will fully know just as we are fully known by God. And there's great evidence to believe in what Scripture is saying here. And that's what this channel is for, to continue to provide faith and evidence that is one day going to turn into love and an eternal existence with our Creator. All right, there's so much that I want to say about that verse, but let's go to Ecclesiastes 3:11, where it says about God, He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from the beginning to end. So God has placed eternity within our hearts, the desire to know these eternal truths and eternal realities, to seek these things out, yet we're still not going to be able to fathom here in this temporal universe all that God has done from the beginning to the end. All right, so that was the first point that I wanted to make about the expansion of knowledge. Now we're going to be wrapping up shortly, but before we do that, I did want to break down just a little bit about the expansion of the universe and what I believe the expansion of the universe is potentially implying. I'm actually in the process of writing an article about the expansion of the universe and the second law of thermodynamics that Tyson was talking about. And within this article, one thing that I was writing is that the expansion of the universe, I believe, is wishing to tell us something, that time is running out and that time will eventually come to an end, as both science and Christian theology believe to be the case. Now, it's important to understand that no man knows when the end of the world is actually going to happen, as God has not put it in the hearts of individuals to know, because He wants us to work on our intimacy with Him, as that is of prime importance in understanding. And we can do all this speculation about old earth and young earth. How long has the universe been here? How long has it not been here? And how much more time do we have? Ultimately, we do not know. And what evidence of scripture is doing is showing that you better be ready and be prepared, because so much scripture has already been fulfilled at this day and age that we are living in, that Christ could come back at any moment. There's no more scripture and prophecy that needs to be fulfilled before the second coming of Christ, as God has already fulfilled these sets of prophecy that were prophesied within the Bible. So we must be ready, as no man knows. So again, I believe the expansion of the universe is wishing to tell us something, as even Tyson explains that space-time, it's going to rip. It's going to be shredded as the universe and the speed of its expansion accelerates. So what I'm gonna do now is let's go ahead and unify what science may be showing us and what scripture may be showing us. And this is where I said again, I am theorizing what might happen at the end of the world and at a time that no one knows. But Revelation 6:12, it says this: I watched as he opened the sixth seal. There was a great earthquake. The sun turned black like sackcloth made of goat hair. The whole moon turned blood red. So what this verse makes me think of is the second law of thermodynamics maybe increasing, okay? Because the Bible actually says that when the end comes, it's going to be like suddenly, like boom, in the flash of an eye. So yeah, we may be in the process of heat death and the sun slowly, the heat slowly dying out. But again, like I said, I believe this scientific evidence is leading us to understand that eventually the end is going to come, and no one knows exactly when that's going to happen. And we see here that the universe completely loses its ability to provide the heat and the sunlight that it once was, as these events that are folding out in Revelation, as these seals are being opened, disaster is coming upon the earth after the church has already been raptured. So now within this same chapter, let's go to verse 14, where it says, the heavens receded like a scroll, being rolled up, and every mountain and island was removed from its place. This really made me think about the expansion of the universe and how Tyson was saying that space-time is going to be shredded. Now it says here that the heavens receded like a scroll. That's heavens plural, because the Lord made the heavens in different firmaments. We have the space-time firmament. We have this earth here, the ground that we're on, firmament, and we have the third heaven. And it says that the heavens are going to recede like a scroll, being folded up or rolled up. Well, what happens if you have heavens plural? That means they're no longer connected, and that they're being torn, and that they're being rolled up and receded. Now again, this is where I'm theorizing, but I believe that this could potentially happen, as scripture has divine credibility about prophecy and then the fulfillment of prophecy. Again, like I said, the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. We have Old Testament prophecies that were fulfilled, and fulfilled in beautiful ways. So I believe that we can trust in the credibility of biblical prophecy, but the reason I say I'm theorizing is not to say that I don't believe that the end is not going to come. I believe the end will come, but I'm theorizing because I don't know how it's going to look or how it's exactly going to come about. All right, now here I'm finally closing. Now, some say that the apocalyptic books of prophecy such as Daniel and Revelation have already been fulfilled in historical events. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because they almost take away the credibility of a future fulfillment of prophetic stories or prophetic words that we see within scripture. So me explaining Revelation right now, they would say, hey, this was already fulfilled in 70 AD. In the apocalyptic works of the book of Daniel, that was already fulfilled in their day and age. And this view is actually known as the Preterist view. And I will put a link in the description where it explains the Preterist view. But I personally believe that this interpretation of apocalyptic books such as Daniel and Revelation, it's inaccurate, because what we see is something in scripture called the law of double reference, where there is an immediate fulfillment of scripture and prophecy, and then also a later fulfillment of scripture and prophecy. Therefore, it's not just the immediate, therefore in the past of historical events that these prophecies were fulfilled. Rather, it's both. There was an immediate fulfillment for some prophecies, and also we can expect later fulfillments of certain prophecies within the Bible. And I believe that's what we have here within the book of Revelation and some of the things that I have broken down. So I'm actually writing an article about preterism, and I believe I'm saying that right. You know, go ahead and look in the link in the description and you'll be able to read it. I believe off the top of my head I'm saying that right, but I'm actually writing an article about this and doing my best not to debunk it because I want to win an argument, rather doing my best to see scripture in the way that I believe it's actually speaking, and seeing historical examples of fulfillment and also later examples of fulfillment, which is where we get the law of double reference. And that's why I used Revelation here, because I don't believe that there has been an ultimate fulfillment of the book of Revelation. So maybe that'll be a video for another time. But with that being said, I hope this blessed you, and put your knowledge, the knowledge that you have, do your best to apply it to what Jesus Christ has to say, as he is the creator of all. With that being said, I hope you have a blessed day.